Hey guys, tonight we begin in the kingdom of Eldrannor, lay entombed in a relentless winter, its rolling hills and barley fields buried under a shroud of snow that had not melted in 3 years. The capital, Vernhold, perched on a granite cliff above the frozen river Sylve, was a fortress of weathered stone, its spires capped with ice, its hearths burning day and night to fend off the biting cold. King Alric, at 32, stood in the great hall of Vernhold Keep, his broad shoulders draped in a wolf fur cloak, his auburn beard flecked with frost, his gray eyes heavy with the weight of a kingdom starving under an endless freeze. The oak-hewn throne, carved with runes of sun and harvest, mocked him with its promise of warmth long gone. The winter had begun as winters do, with crisp winds and snowflakes dusting the thatched roofs of Vernhold's cobbled streets. But when spring failed to thaw the fields, and summer brought only deeper snow, panic seeped into Eldrannor. The granaries, once brimming with rye and oats, stood nearly empty, their wooden beams creaking under frost. Wolves prowled closer, their howls echoing in the night, and the peasantry whispered of a curse, blaming Alric's rule. His father, King Torin, had died in a border skirmish with the neighboring Drenver clans, leaving Alric to inherit a fractured realm. Now, the unending winter threatened to break it entirely. In the great hall, where tapestries of summer hunts hung stiff with cold, Alric faced his council. The air smelled of damp wool and smoky pine, the braziers casting flickering shadows. Lord Baldric, the grizzled steward of Vernhold, his face lined like cracked earth, spoke first, his voice rough. "Sire, the granaries hold a month's grain at best. The villages starve, Harrowfen reports children eating bark. The Drenver clans raid our borders, stealing what little we have." Alric's fingers tightened on his sword hilt, its pommel etched with a stag. "The Drenver will answer for their raids," he said, his voice steady but strained. "Send riders to the eastern barrens, demand their stored grain. We'll ration what remains." Lady Alara, his chief advisor and childhood friend, stepped forward, her chestnut hair braided under a wool hood, her green eyes sharp with worry. Her cloak, embroidered with silver leaves, brushed the stone floor. "Sire, the barons hoard their grain, fearing rebellion. The people speak of a frost god's wrath, Scover, they call it. They demand a sacrifice." The council murmured, their fur-lined cloaks rustling, some nodding, others averting their eyes. Alric's jaw tightened, the weight of their fear pressing on him. "No sacrifices," he said, his voice a low growl. "Scover's a myth. We fight hunger, not gods." But doubt gnawed at him, the winter's unnatural grip whispering of forces beyond his control. Alara leaned close, her voice low, her breath clouding the air. "Alric, the priests stir the people. If we don't act, they'll turn on you." Her hand brushed his, a fleeting warmth. Alric nodded, his gray eyes on the hall's frosted windows. "Call the priests to the keep. We'll hear them, but I'll not bow to superstition." He dismissed the council, their boots crunching on the icy floor, and stood alone, the throne's runes a silent challenge to save his kingdom. The priest's warning. The temple of Orin, carved into Vernhold's cliffside, loomed over the frozen river Sylve, its basalt pillars etched with sun motifs now crusted with ice. Inside, the air was heavy with incense and the faint tang of mildew, its braziers struggling against the cold that seeped through stone. Alric descended the winding steps, his wolf fur cloak trailing, his boots crunching frost, to meet High Priestess Mirren, the keeper of Eldrannor's ancient rites. Her white robes, embroidered with golden flames, draped her frail frame, her silver hair glowing in the candlelight, her blue eyes sharp as winter's edge. Mirren knelt before a statue of Orin, the sun god, its marble face worn by time, its hands holding a flame long extinguished. "Sire," she said, her voice a rasp, "Scover, the frost god, grips Eldrannor. The chronicles speak of a winter that never ends, a curse for forsaking the old rites. Blood must be offered to appease him. Alric's heart sank, the memory of his father's rejection of blood sacrifices vivid. "No blood," he said, his voice firm, echoing in the temple's vaulted ceiling. "My father ended those rites. The people starve, we need grain, not gods." Marin's eyes narrowed, her hands clutching a bone amulet carved with frost runes. "The chronicles are clear, sire. Scover's wrath freezes the land. A sacrifice, a life of royal blood, may break the curse. Ignore it, and Vernholt falls." Her words hung like frost, the temple's chill biting Alric's skin. He turned, his cloak sweeping, his voice sharp. "I'll not spill blood for myths. Find another way, Marin." But as he climbed back to the keep, the wind howling through the cliffside, he felt the weight of her warning, the winter's grip tightening like a noose. Back in the great hall, Alara waited, her face pale, her green eyes troubled. The hall's tapestries sagged under ice, the air thick with smoke from dying braziers. "Alric, the priests are rallying the people," she said, her voice low. "They chant for Scover in the square. If we don't act, they'll storm the keep." Alric's fist clenched, his beard flecked with frost. "Then we act," he said, his voice resolute. "Send foragers to the northern woods, there may be game beneath the snow. And summon the barons. They'll yield their grain, or face my sword." Alara's hand touched his arm, her warmth a fleeting anchor. "And Marin's curse?" she asked, her voice trembling. Alric's gray eyes darkened. "We fight the winter, not gods. But if it's a curse, I'll break it myself." The hall's silence was heavy, the wind's howl a reminder of the endless cold. The hunger's rebellion. Vernholt's market square was a frozen wasteland, its stalls splintered, its cobbles buried under snow, the air sharp with the scent of hunger and despair. Peasants huddled in ragged cloaks, their faces gaunt, their breaths clouding as they chanted Scover's name, their voices rising like a storm. Torches flickered, casting shadows on the keep's walls, where banners of Eldranor's stag hung tattered and iced. Alric watched from the keep's battlements, his wolf fur cloak whipping in the wind, his gray eyes scanning the mob, their anger a spark ready to ignite. Lord Baldric joined him, his breath steaming, his fur-lined and framing a face etched with worry. "Sire, the mob grows," Harrowfen's folk join them, claiming you've cursed the land. They demand a sacrifice to Scover. Alric's jaw tightened, his hand on his sword. "They'll have grain, not blood," he said, his voice a growl. "Alara's foragers are in the woods, and the barons arrive tomorrow. We hold the keep." Below, the mob surged, a woman with hollow cheeks hurling a stone at the keep's gates, her cry piercing the night. "Scover takes us. The king abandons us." The crowd roared, their torches a sea of fire, their desperation a blade at Alric's heart. Alara appeared, her cloak dusted with snow, her green eyes fierce. "Alric, the foragers found nothing, wolves took the last deer. The barons delay, hoarding their grain. The priests are with the mob, Marin leads them." Alric's heart raced, the temple's warning echoing. "Then we face them," he said, his voice resolute. "Open the keep's stores, give them what grain we have. I'll meet Marin in the square." Alara's face paled, her hand gripping his. "Alric, they'll tear you apart." He shook his head, his beard brushing her hand. "I'm their king. I'll face their hunger." He descended to the square, his sword sheathed, his cloak a banner of defiance. The mob parted, their chants faltering as Marin stepped forward, her white robes glowing, her bone amulet gleaming. "Sire," she said, her voice cutting through the wind, "Scover demands blood. Yield, or Vernholt burns." Alric stood tall, his voice a roar. Eldrinor starves, not burns. Follow me, and we'll break this winter. The mob wavered, their torches dimming, but Merrin's eyes burned, the winter's grip unyielding, and Alric's resolve faced its first true test. The king's defiance. Vernholt's market square was a frozen battlefield, its snow-packed cobbles glinting under torchlight, the air thick with the acrid scent of burning pitch and the desperate cries of the starving. The mob surged, their ragged cloaks patched with burlap, their faces gaunt, their voices chanting Scover's name as if the frost god himself loomed in the blizzard's howl. King Alric stood before them, his wolf fur cloak whipping in the wind, his auburn beard flecked with ice, his gray eyes blazing with resolve. Vernholt Keep's granite walls loomed behind him, its stag banners tattered, its gates creaking under the mob's pressure. The endless winter, now in its third year, had drained Eldrinor's granaries, and the people's faith in their king hung by a thread. High Priestess Merrin, her white robes glowing like frost, her bone amulet carved with runes, raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "Sire," she said, her voice sharp as a blade, cutting through the wind's wail, "Scover's curse buries us. Blood alone, a royal sacrifice, will thaw the land. Yield, or the people will take it." Her blue eyes gleamed, cold as the river sylph's ice. Alric's hand rested on his sword, its stag pommel icy under his glove. "Eldrinor needs grain, not blood," he roared, his voice echoing off the keep's walls. "The barons come with stores, and foragers seek game. Stand with me, and we break this winter." The mob wavered, some lowering their torches, others murmuring, their hunger warring with hope. Lady Alara, her chestnut hair braided beneath a wool hood, her green eyes sharp with urgency, pushed through the crowd, her silver-leaf cloak dusted with snow. "Sire, the keep's stores are open," she shouted, her voice clear. "Grain for all, tonight." The mob cheered, their desperation easing, but Merrin's gaze hardened, her amulet clutched tightly. A stone flew, grazing Alric's shoulder, its sting sharp through his cloak. A man, his face hollow, shouted, "Scover demands blood." The crowd surged again, torches flaring, but Alric stood firm, his sword still sheathed. "I am your king," he bellowed. "Follow me, or follow myths to ruin." The mob parted, some kneeling, others retreating, the square's icy air heavy with uncertainty. Alara reached his side, her breath clouding. "Alric, you've calmed them, but Merrin won't stop. She's rallying the priests in the temple." Her hand brushed his, her warmth a fleeting anchor. Alric nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we face the barons next. Their grain will feed us, or their heads will roll." He strode back to the keep, the mob's chants fading, the winter's grip unyielding. The barons' bargain. Vernholt Keep's great hall was a cavern of cold stone, its tapestries of summer hunts frozen stiff, their colors dulled by frost. The braziers sputtered, their smoky pine scent mingling with the damp wool of cloaks as the eastern barons arrived, their boots crunching ice on the floor. Alric sat on the oak-hewn throne, its sun runes mocking the endless winter, his wolf fur cloak heavy, his gray eyes scanning the barons, Lord Cedric of Thornvale, his black beard oiled, his velvet doublet rich, Lady Gwyneth of Rivermoor, her silver hair pinned with garnets, her eyes sharp, and Lord Torvald of Ironcrag, his scarred face grim, his axe at his side. Lord Baldric, the steward, stood at Alric's right, his lined face pale, his voice low. "Sire, the granaries are near empty. Harrowfen's folk eat roots. The Drenver clans raid deeper, burning villages. These barons hoard grain, force their hand." Alric nodded, his hand on his sword. "Speak, Cedric," he said, his voice steady but edged. "Your silos brim while Vernholt starves. Yield your grain, or face treason." Cedric's lips curled, his doublet's gold thread glinting. "Sire, our grain feeds our own. The West rebels, the Drenver raid, we need stores for our garrisons. Name a price, not a threat. Lady Gwyneth's voice was cold, her garnet pins flashing. The people blame you, sire. They chant Scover's name, not ours. A sacrifice might appease them. Alric's fist slammed the throne, its runes trembling. No sacrifices, he roared, the hall echoing. Your grain, or your lands are forfeit. The barons flinched, their cloaks rustling, but Torvald leaned forward, his axe gleaming. Sire, Torvald said, his voice a growl, we'll give half our stores, but we want men, your knights, to guard our borders from Drenver raids. Elara, at Alric's left, her silver-leaf cloak shimmering, spoke softly. Sire, accept. Half their grain buys time. The Drenver are the greater threat. Her green eyes met his, urging caution. Alric's jaw tightened, the winter's weight pressing. Half, then, he said, his voice low. But betray me, in your head's answer. The barons bowed, their faces masks of compliance, but Alric sensed their reluctance, the hall's chill mirroring their distrust. As they left, Elara whispered, Mirren's priests spread tales of Scover in the villages. If the barons waver, the mob will rise again. Alric's gray eyes darken, the wind howling outside. Then we ride to the Drenver border. We'll break their raids and prove this winter mortal. The throne's runes loomed, a challenge to his reign. The Drenver's blade. The southern border of Eldrenor was a wasteland of snow and ash, the villages of Blackthorn reduced to charred timbers, their fields buried under drifts. The Drenver clans, fur-clad raiders from the frost-bitten mountains, struck like wolves, their curved axes gleaming, their war cries piercing the blizzard's roar. Alric led a cohort of knights through the icy wastes, his warhorse's breath steaming, his wolf fur cloak crusted with snow, his sword heavy at his side. The air was sharp with pine and blood, the sky a leaden shroud. Sir Rowan, his captain, rode beside him, his helm dented, his blue eyes grim. Sire, the Drenver hit Blackthorn last night, stole grain, burned homes. Survivors say they're massing in the Frostvale Pass. Alric's gray eyes narrowed, his beard icing over. Then we meet them there, he said, his voice resolute. No more raids. We end this. He spurred his horse, the knight's banners, stags on green, flapping in the wind, their armor clanking through the snow. At Frostvale Pass, a narrow gorge flanked by jagged cliffs, the Drenver waited, their furs blending with the snow, their axes raised. Their leader, Varg, a giant with braided hair and a wolfskin cape, stepped forward, his voice booming. King Alric, your kingdom starves while you hide in Vernholt. Give us grain, or we burn more. Alric dismounted, his sword drawn, its stag pommel glinting. You'll have steel, not grain, he roared, the gorge echoing. Leave Eldrenor, or die. The Drenver charged, their axes flashing, and Alric's knights met them, swords clashing, blood staining the snow. Alric fought Varg, their blades sparking, the wind howling, the cold biting his bones. Elara, who had insisted on joining, her bow drawn, loosed arrows from a ridge, her silver-leaf cloak a beacon. Alric, their flank weakens, she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. A Drenver axe grazed Alric's arm, blood seeping through his cloak, but he struck back, his sword slashing Varg's chest, forcing him to his knees. The Drenver broke, fleeing into the pass, their cries fading. Alric stood, panting, the snow red around him. Rowan approached, his helm bloodied. Sire, we've won, but Blackthorn's lost. The Baron's grain must come now. Alric nodded, his wound throbbing, Mirren's warning echoing, blood for Scover. Back to Vernholt, he said, his voice raw. The winter's not done with us. The pass's icy walls loomed, the kingdom's survival hanging by a thread. The Baron's betrayal. Vernholt Keep's great hall was a frozen mausoleum, its stone walls glistening with ice, the tapestries of summer hunts sagging under frost's weight. The braziers sputtered, their smoky pine scent barely warming the air, which carried the faint tang of mildew and despair. King Alric sat on the oak-hewn throne, its sun runes dulled by the endless winter's gloom, his wolf fur cloak crusted with snow from his return from Frostvale Pass. His auburn beard was matted with ice, his gray eyes burning with resolve despite the ache in his wounded arm, bandaged beneath his tunic. The victory over the Drenver had secured the southern border, but Eldrenor's hunger gnawed deeper, the granaries nearly empty, the people's faith fraying. Lord Baldric, his grizzled face pale as the snow outside, stood before Alric, his fur-lined cloak trembling. "Sire," he said, his voice rough, "the Baron's grain hasn't come." Cedric of Thornvale sent word, they withhold half, claiming Drenver raids threaten their lands. The villages starve, Harrowfen's folk boil leather for broth. Alric's fist clenched, his sword's stag pommel cold under his glove. They swore half their stores, he growled, his voice echoing in the hall's icy silence. "Send riders to Thornvale. Cedric yields, or I'll seize his lands." Lady Alara, her chestnut hair braided tightly, her green eyes sharp with worry, stepped forward, her silver-leaf cloak shimmering in the torchlight. "Sire, the Baron's plot rebellion. Scouts report Cedric meeting with Gwyneth and Torvald in secret. They may side with Mirren's priests, claiming Scover's curse demands your blood." Alric's jaw tightened, the memory of Mirren's warning, blood for Scover, stinging like his wound. "Then we ride to Thornvale," he said, his voice resolute. "I'll face Cedric myself." He rose, his cloak sweeping, the throne's runes a mocking reminder of lost summers. Sir Rowan, his captain, entered, his helm dented, his blue eyes grim. "Sire, the mob gathers again in the market square. Mirren leads them, chanting for sacrifice. The keep's gates won't hold if they storm." Alric's heart raced, the winter's grip tightening. "Open the last stores," he ordered, his voice steady. "Feed them what we have. Alara, summon the priests to the keep. I'll hear Mirren, but not bow." He turned to the frosted windows, where torchlight flickered in the square, the mob's chants a rising storm. Alara's hand touched his arm, her warmth fleeting. "Alric, be wary. Cedric's betrayal and Mirren's lies could break us." Her green eyes held his, urging caution. Alric nodded, his gray eyes dark. "We break the winter first." The hall's chill deepened, the Baron's betrayal a blade at his back. The priestess's fire. The Temple of Orin was a fortress of shadow, its basalt pillars crusted with ice, its sun motifs buried under frost. The air inside was heavy with incense, its cloying sweetness battling the cold that seeped through the stone, the braziers casting a dim glow on the statue of Orin, its marble flame extinguished. Alric stood before High Priestess Mirren, her white robes glowing like snow, her silver hair framing a face etched with zeal, her blue eyes cold as the winter outside. Her bone amulet, carved with frost runes, swung as she spoke, her voice a hiss that echoed in the vaulted ceiling. "Sire," Mirren said, clutching her amulet, "Scover's curse buries Eldrenor. The Barons hoard grain, the Drenver raid, the people starve, all signs of his wrath. A royal sacrifice, your blood, will thaw the land. Refuse, and Vernholt burns with rebellion." Alric's wolf fur cloak was heavy with frost, his wounded arm throbbing, his gray eyes fierce. "I'll not spill blood for myths," he said, his voice a growl, reverberating off the temple's walls. "The Baron's grain will feed us. The Drenver are broken. Find another way, Mirren." Mirren's lips thinned, her amulet gleaming. "The chronicles are clear, sire. Scover demands blood, or the winter never ends. The people follow me, they'll storm the keep if you defy the gods. Her voice was a blade, the temples chill biting Auric's skin. Elara, at his side, her silver-leaf cloak dusted with snow, spoke softly, her green eyes steady. Mirren, the granary's open tonight. The barons ride to Vernholt. Give us time to fight this winter with steel, not blood. Mirren's gaze hardened, her robes rustling. Time buries us, Lady Elara. Scover waits. She turned to the statue, her prayers a low chant, the incense swirling like fog. Auric strode out, his boots crunching ice, the wind howling through the cliffside. In the keep, the mob's chants grew louder, their torches a sea of fire in the market square. Elara's voice was urgent. Auric, Mirren's rallying the villages. If the barons betray us, the priests will lead a revolt. Auric's fist clenched, his sword heavy. Then we ride at dawn. Cedric answers, or his head rolls. The temple's warning hung like frost, the mobs fire a spark ready to ignite. The rebels blade. Thornvale, a fortified hold in Eldranor's eastern hills, was a bastion of stone and snow, its walls topped with icicles, its fields buried under drifts. Auric rode through a blizzard, his warhorse snorting steam, his wolf fur cloak crusted with ice, his wounded arm aching under bandages. His knights, led by Sir Rowan, followed, their stag banners flapping, their armor clanking in the wind's howl. The air was sharp with pine and the faint scent of smoke, a reminder of Drenver raids and burned villages. At Thornvale's gates, Lord Cedric awaited, his black beard oiled, his velvet doublet rich against the snow, his eyes glinting with defiance. "Sire," he said, his voice smooth, "my grain feeds my people. The West rebels, the priests stir, your rule falters. Join us, or we side with Mirren." Auric dismounted, his sword drawn, its stag pommel flashing. "You swore half your stores," he roared, the wind carrying his voice. "Yield, or Thornvale burns." His knights formed a line, their shields gleaming, the snow red with torchlight. Cedric laughed, his guards raising crossbows. The barons stand together, Auric. Gwyneth and Torvald arm their garrisons. "Scover's curse is your doing, step down, or we take Vernholt." Elara, her bow drawn, her silver-leaf cloak a beacon, shouted from Auric's side. "Cedric, betray the king, and Eldranor falls." Her arrow flew, grazing a guard's arm, sparking chaos. Cedric's men fired, bolts whistling, and Auric's knights charged, swords clashing, blood staining the snow. Auric fought Cedric, their blades sparking, the blizzard blinding. Cedric's sword slashed Auric's cloak, but Auric struck back, his blade cutting Cedric's thigh, forcing him to his knees. "Yield!" Auric roared, his voice raw, the snow swirling like a shroud. Cedric spat, his blood steaming. "Scover takes you." A bolt struck Auric's shoulder, pain flaring, but Rowan tackled the shooter, saving his king. The guards faltered, Cedric dragged away, and Auric stood, panting, the snow red around him. Elara bound his wound, her hands trembling, her green eyes fierce. "Auric, we've won, but Gwyneth and Torvald march. Mirren's mob grows. We must return." Auric nodded, his shoulder throbbing, Mirren's warning echoing, blood or ruin. "To Vernholt," he said, his voice resolute. "We face them all." The blizzard roared, Thornvale's walls looming, the winter's curse a shadow over his reign. The Northern March. The northern mountains of Eldranor loomed like jagged teeth against a sky heavy with snow, their peaks shrouded in mist, the air sharp with the scent of pine and frozen earth. King Auric led his cohort through a narrow pass, his warhorse's hooves crunching ice, his wolf fur cloak crusted with frost, his shoulder wound throbbing beneath blood-stiffened bandages. His auburn beard was matted with snow, his gray eyes scanning the cliffs for Drenver ambushes, the weight of the chronicle of Scover's words heavy in his mind, a frost altar, demanding royal blood to end the winter's curse. Vernholt, left behind under siege from Lady Gwyneth's forces, teetered on collapse, its granaries empty, its people swayed by High Priestess Mirren's chants. Sir Rowan, his helm dented, his blue eyes wary, rode at Auric's side, his sword glinting in the dim light. "Sire," he said, his voice hoarse, "the Drenver know these mountains. If this altar's real, they'll guard it. We're 20 knights against their hundreds." Auric's jaw tightened, his sword's stag pommel cold in his grip. "If it's a trap, we spring it," he said, his voice resolute. "The winter ends here, or we do." His breath steamed, the pass's icy walls closing in like a tomb. Lady Alara, her chestnut hair tangled beneath her wool hood, her silver-leaf cloak flecked with snow, rode behind, her bow slung across her back. Her green eyes were sharp, her voice low. "Auric, Mirren's priests stir Vernholt's mob. If we fail here, Gwyneth takes the keep. We need a sign this altar exists." Auric nodded, his heart racing, the chronicle's frost runes vivid in his memory. "We find it, Alara. No more myths." The wind howled, carrying the distant howl of wolves, and Auric spurred his horse, the cohort's banners, stags on green, flapping like ghosts. At dusk, they reached a frozen valley, its snowdrifts hiding ancient stones carved with runes. A cave mouth yawned, its entrance framed by icicles like fangs. Auric dismounted, his boots sinking, his sword drawn. "This is it," he said, his voice low, the air heavy with the scent of damp stone. Inside, a stone altar gleamed, its surface etched with frost patterns, a faint blue glow pulsing within. Rowan's eyes widened, his hand on his sword. "Sire, it's no myth. But the Drenver will come." Auric's gray eyes burned, Mirren's warning echoing, "Blood for Scover." "Then we hold the cave," he said, his voice resolute. "Alara, scout the perimeter. Rowan, fortify the entrance." The altar's glow flickered, the winter's curse a shadow over his reign. The altar's call. The cave was a frozen crypt, its walls glistening with ice, the air thick with the chill of ancient stone and the faint hum of the frost altar's blue glow. Auric stood before it, his wolf fur cloak heavy, his shoulder wound aching, his gray eyes fixed on the altar's runes, their patterns swirling like a frozen river. The Chronicle of Scover had spoken of this place, a shrine where royal blood could appease the frost god, ending the winter that gripped Eldrenor for 3 years. Outside, the valley's snowdrifts muffled the wind's howl, but the distant clash of steel warned of Drenver scouts closing in. Alara returned, her silver-leaf cloak dusted with snow, her green eyes wide with urgency. Auric, Drenver warriors, 50 strong, approach from the west. They've seen our tracks. We're trapped. Auric's fist clenched, his sword's stag pommel glinting. "Then we fight," he said, his voice steady. "Rowan, barricade the entrance with ice and stone. We hold until dawn." His knights moved, their armor clanking, piling snow-packed boulders, their breaths steaming in the cave's chill. The altar pulsed, its glow casting shadows on Alara's face. "Auric, this altar, it's no natural stone," she said, her voice trembling. "It hums, like a heartbeat. What if Mirren's right? What if it demands blood?" Auric's heart sank, doubt creeping in. "No blood," he said, his voice raw. "My father ended those rites. This winter's a plague, not a curse." But the altar's glow intensified, the cave's air growing colder, as if Scover himself watched. Rowan shouted from the entrance, his sword drawn. "Sire, they're here." Drenver axes struck the barricade, their war cries echoing, the ice splintering. Alric joined his knights, his sword flashing, cutting a Drenver's arm, blood steaming on the snow. Belera's arrows flew, piercing furs, but the Drenver pressed, their numbers overwhelming. Alric fought back-to-back with Rowan, his shoulder screaming, his blade sparking. A Drenver axe grazed his side, pain flaring, but he struck back, felling the warrior. The altar's glow pulsed faster, the cave trembling, and Belera shouted, "Alric, it's reacting." A crack split the altar, light spilling, the air humming with power. Alric staggered, his blood dripping onto the altar, its glow flaring white. The cave shook, ice falling, and the Drenver froze, their eyes wide. "Scover," one shouted, fleeing. Alric's vision blurred, his voice resolute. "Hold the line." The altar's call was a mystery, the winter's truth teetering on the edge of revelation. The rebels' siege. Vernholt Keep stood like a wounded giant, its granite walls scarred by frost, its stag banners shredded by the blizzard's wrath. The market square below was a battlefield, the mob's torches a sea of fire, their chants for Scover mingling with the clash of Lady Gwyneth's and Lord Torvald's forces against the keep's gates. Lord Baldric, his grizzled face pale, stood on the battlements, his fur-lined cloak trembling, his voice hoarse. The mob's with the barons now, Merrin's priests lead them. The Eastern Knights are a day away. We can't hold. In the northern mountains, Alric staggered from the cave, his cohort battered, the Drenver scattered by the altar's flare. His wolf fur cloak was torn, his side bleeding, his gray eyes fierce despite the pain. The altar's white light had faded, but the winter's grip held, the snow falling heavier. Belera, her silver-leaf cloak stained with blood, supported him, her green eyes urgent. "Alric, the altar took your blood, it shook the cave. We must return to Vernholt. Gwyneth's siege begins." Alric nodded, his sword heavy, his voice raw. "Rowan, rally the knights. We ride south." The cohort mounted, their horses snorting steam, the pass's icy walls looming as they raced through the blizzard, the altar's mystery a weight on Alric's heart. At Vernholt, the keep's gates buckled, Gwyneth's archers loosing bolts, Torvald's axemen battering the wood. Baldric led the defenders, their spears glinting, but the mob surged, Merrin's white robes glowing as she chanted, "Scover demands blood." The air was thick with smoke and fear, the snow red with blood. Alric's cohort arrived at dusk, their banners of faint hope. He charged the square, his sword slashing, his voice roaring. "For Eldrenor!" His knights clashed with Gwyneth's forces, Belera's arrows felling archers, but Merrin's priests rallied the mob, their torches igniting the keep's outer walls. Alric faced Gwyneth, her garnet-pinned hair gleaming, her sword raised. "Your reign ends, Alric," she shouted, her blade striking his. He parried, his wounds screaming, but his gray eyes burned. "Eldrenor stands," he roared, disarming her, his knights routing Torvald's men. Merrin appeared, her amulet gleaming, her voice a hiss. The altar called, "Sire." Your blood woke Scover. Yield, or all burn. Alric's sword wavered, the winter's truth a shadow, the keep's flames rising as his reign hung by a thread. The keep's last stand. Vernholt Keep stood like a battered sentinel, its granite walls scorched by torches, its iron gates splintering under the barons' battering rams. The market square below was a frozen hell, the snow-stained cobbles lit by the mob's fires, their chants for Scover a deafening roar. King Alric fought on the battlements, his wolf fur cloak torn, his shoulder and side wounds bleeding through bandages, his auburn beard crusted with frost. His gray eyes burned with defiance, his sword's stag pommel glinting as he slashed a rebel axeman, blood steaming in the cold. The endless winter, now 3 years deep, had starved Eldrenor, and Lady Gwyneth's and Lord Torvald's forces, allied with High Priestess Merrin's mob, besieged the keep, threatening to topple Alric's reign. Sir Rowan, his helm bloodied, his blue eyes fierce, fought beside Alric, his sword clashing with a rebel's axe. "Sire," he shouted, his voice hoarse over the din, "the Eastern Knights are hours away. The gates won't hold, Gwyneth's archers are on the walls." Alric parried a blow, his shoulders screaming, his voice a roar. "Then we hold the battlements," he bellowed, rallying his knights, their stag banners tattered in the blizzard. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning pitch, the snow red with blood. Lady Alara, her silver-leaf cloak stained, her chestnut hair loosed arrows from a tower, her green eyes sharp. Alric, Mirren's priests lead the mob, they're breaching the inner courtyard. Her bowstring sang, felling a rebel, but the gates buckled, the mob pouring through, their torches a sea of fire. Lord Baldric, his grizzled face pale, shouted from below, "Sire, the granaries are empty. The mob takes nothing, they want your blood." His fur-lined cloak flapped as he swung a mace, holding the courtyard with a handful of guards. Alric descended, his sword flashing, his voice cutting through the chaos. "For Eldrenor," he roared, fighting through the mob, his blade slashing a priest's robe. Gwyneth appeared, her garnet-pinned hair gleaming, her sword raised. "Your reign ends, Alric," she shouted, her blade striking his. He parried, his wounds flaring, but disarmed her, his knights routing her men. Mirren emerged, her white robes glowing, her bone amulet pulsing with frost runes. "Scover woke, sire," she hissed, her blue eyes wild. "Your blood at the altar stirred him, yield, or all burn." The keep trembled, flames licking the walls, and Alric's heart raced, the altar's mystery a shadow over his resolve. Alara pulled him back, her voice urgent. "Alric, we must retreat to the Great Hall. The Eastern Knights come." Alric nodded, his sword raised, leading his knights through the chaos, the keep's fall looming as the winter's curse tightened its grip. The Hall of Defiance. The Great Hall of Vernholt Keep was a frozen fortress, its stone walls glistening with ice, its tapestries of summer hunts charred by stray sparks. The oak-hewn throne, its sun runes blackened, stood defiant as King Alric rallied his knights, his wolf fur cloak drenched in blood and snow, his gray eyes fierce despite the pain of his wounds. The hall's braziers sputtered, their smoky pine scent choking the air, the distant crash of the keep's gates echoing like a death knell. Gwyneth's and Torvald's forces pressed the inner courtyard, Mirren's mob chanting Scover's name, their torches igniting the keep's outer halls. Alara, her silver-leaf cloak torn, her green eyes blazing, barred the hall's doors, her bow ready. "Alric, the Eastern Knights are near," she said, her voice steady. "We hold here until they break the siege." Her chestnut hair was matted with ash, her hands steady despite the chaos. Sir Rowan, his helm lost, his face bloodied, stood at Alric's side, his sword raised. "Sire, Torvald's axemen are at the doors." The mobs with them, Mirren's priests lead the charge. Alric's jaw tightened, his sword's stag pommel glinting. "Then we fight," he said, his voice resolute. "No blood for Scover, only steel for Eldrenor." He climbed the throne, his wounds screaming, his voice a roar. "Knights, hold the hall. The kingdom stands with us." The doors splintered, Torvald's axemen bursting through, their blades flashing, their furs stained with blood. Alric fought, his sword slashing, felling a rebel, his knights forming a shield wall. Alara's arrows flew, piercing armor, but Mirren entered, her white robes untouched by the chaos, her bone amulet glowing. "Your blood woke, Scover," she shouted, her voice echoing. "Yield, or the winter consumes all." Alric's blade wavered, the altar's white flare vivid in his mind. "Your curse is fear, Mirren," he roared, his sword striking a priest, blood steaming. The hall shook, flames spreading, and a horn sounded, the Eastern Knights, their banners cresting the hill, their charge breaking Gwyneth's lines. Torvald lunged, his axe grazing Auric's chest, pain flaring, but Rowan tackled him, their blades clashing. Auric faced Mirren, his voice raw. "End this, or die with your myth." Mirren's eyes widened, her amulet pulsing, and she fled into the smoke, her priests faltering. Alara grabbed Auric, her voice urgent. "The knights are here. We've won." The hall's flames roared, the siege breaking, but Mirren's words lingered, the winter's truth a shadow over Auric's reign. The winter's truth. The market square of Vernholt was a battlefield of ash and snow, the mob's torches extinguished, their chants silenced as the Eastern Knights routed Gwyneth's and Torvald's forces. The keep stood scarred, its walls blackened, its gates shattered, but standing. King Auric leaned on his sword, his wolf fur cloak drenched in blood, his gray eyes weary but resolute. His wounds bled, his auburn beard matted, but the Eastern Knights' banners, stags on green, flew high, the rebels fleeing into the blizzard. The winter, relentless in its third year, buried Eldrenor, but hope flickered as the siege broke. Alara, her silver-leaf cloak torn, her green eyes bright with relief, bound Auric's wounds, her hands trembling. "Auric, Gwyneth's captured, Torvald's dead," she said, her voice soft. The mob scattered, but Mirren's gone, she fled to the temple. Lord Baldric, his grizzled face streaked with soot, approached, his mace bloodied. "Sire, the Eastern Knights brought grain, enough for a month." But Mirren's priests still whisper of Scover. The people fear the altar's call. Auric's heart sank, the cave's white flare vivid, his blood on the frost altar a mystery. "Then we end this," he said, his voice raw. "To the temple." Mirren answers for her lies. He strode through the square, the snow crunching, the air thick with smoke and the scent of blood. In the temple of Orin, its basalt pillars crusted with ice, Mirren stood before the sun god statue, her white robes glowing, her bone amulet pulsing. "Sire," she said, her blue eyes fierce, "your blood woke the altar. Scover stirs, the winter deepens because you didn't finish the rite." Auric's sword wavered, his wounds throbbing. "Your curse is a lie, Mirren," he said, his voice steady. "The altar's glow was no god, just stone. Show me truth, or face my steel." Mirren's amulet flared, and she revealed a hidden scroll, its pages brittle, marked with frost runes. "The chronicle speaks of a star's fall, buried in the altar," she said, her voice trembling. "Your blood woke it, a relic, not a god. Destroy it, or the winter never ends." Auric's gray eyes widened, doubt shaking his resolve. Alara whispered, "Auric, if it's true, we must return north. If it's a trap, Mirren dies." The temple's chill deepened, the winter's truth ablaze at Auric's heart. The altar's heart. The northern mountains of Eldrenor were a frozen wasteland, their jagged peaks piercing a sky heavy with snow, the air sharp with the scent of pine and ancient ice. King Auric led his battered cohort through the Frostvale Pass, his warhorse's hooves crunching frozen earth, his wolf fur cloak torn and bloodied from Vernholt's siege. His shoulder and side wounds throbbed beneath bandages, his auburn beard matted with frost, his gray eyes fixed on the cave ahead, where the frost altar's blue glow had flared with his blood. High Priestess Mirren's scroll, claiming a star's relic powered the winter's curse, weighed on his mind, its frost runes a promise of truth or a trap. Vernholt, left under Sir Rowan's guard, held against the Baron's remnants, but time was short. Lady Alara rode beside him, her silver-leaf cloak crusted with snow, her chestnut hair tangled, her green eyes sharp with determination. Her bow was slung across her back, her voice low. "Auric, if this relic's real, destroying it could end the winter. If it's Mirren's lie, the Drinver wait to ambush us." Auric's sword, its stag pommel glinting, hung heavy at his side. "Then we face them," he said, his voice resolute, his breath steaming in the blizzard's howl. This ends today. The cohort's stag banners flapped, their knights' armor clanking, their faces gaunt but loyal. At the cave's mouth, icicles gleamed like fangs, the air thick with the damp chill of stone. The frost altar stood within, its surface pulsing blue, its runes swirling like a frozen storm. Alric approached, his boots sinking in snow, his heart racing. The altar hummed, its glow intensifying, and a faint crack revealed a shard within, a jagged stone, glowing like a captured star, its light cold as the winter itself. Illyra's eyes widened, her hand on her bow. Alric, it's no myth, this relic's alive. Her voice trembled, the cave's walls trembling with the altar's hum. A Drenver war cry echoed, axes flashing as warriors emerged from the snow, their furs blending with the drifts. Their leader, Varg, his wolfskin cape bloodied from their last clash, roared, "The star's ours, Alric. Leave, or die." Alric's knights formed a line, their shields gleaming, and Alric charged, his sword slashing Varg's arm, blood steaming. Illyra's arrows flew, felling Drenver, but the altar's hum grew louder, the cave shaking. Alric struck the altar with his sword, the blade sparking, the shard's glow flaring white. "For Eldrinor," he shouted, his voice raw, as the altar cracked, light spilling, the Drenver faltering in fear. The cave trembled, ice falling, and Illyra pulled Alric back, her voice urgent. "It's breaking." The shard pulsed, the winter's grip tightening, and Alric's resolve faced its final test. The stars fall. The frost altar's cave was a maelstrom of light and ice, its walls shuddering as the star shard's white glow flooded the chamber, the air humming with unnatural power. King Alric stood, his wolf fur cloak torn, his wounds bleeding, his gray eyes fierce as he gripped his sword, its stag pommel glinting. The Drenver, scattered by the altar's flare, retreated into the blizzard, their war cries fading, but Varg remained, his axe raised, his wolfskin cape steaming with blood. Lady Illyra, her silver-leaf cloak stained, her green eyes wide, loosed arrows to cover Alric, her chestnut hair whipping in the cave's gusts. The winter, 3 years unrelenting, seemed to pulse with the shard, its curse, or truth, at the heart of Eldrinor's ruin. Alric struck the altar again, his sword sparking, the shard's glow blinding. "End this," he roared, his voice echoing, the cave trembling as cracks spiderwebbed the stone. Varg lunged, his axe grazing Alric's side, pain flaring, but Alric parried, his blade slashing Varg's chest, felling him. The Drenver broke, fleeing, their fear of the shard outweighing their greed. Illyra grabbed a fallen torch, its flame sputtering, and thrust it into the altar's crack. "Fire, Alric," she shouted, her voice urgent. "Melt the shard." The flames licked the stone, the shard's glow flickering, the cave's hum rising to a scream. Alric drove his sword into the crack, twisting, and the shard shattered, its light exploding in a wave of heat, the ice walls melting, water dripping like tears. The blizzard outside softened, the snow slowing, the air warming for the first time in years. Alric staggered, his wounds bleeding, his gray eyes wide. "It's done," he said, his voice raw, the cave's chill fading. Illyra supported him, her hands trembling, her green eyes bright with hope. "The winter's breaking, Alric. You did it." Rowan, his helm lost, his face bloodied, entered the cave, his sword sheathed. "Sire, the Drenver are gone. But Vernholt needs you," Gwyneth's remnants rally with Mirren's priests. Alric nodded, his sword heavy, his heart lifting. "We ride south," he said, his voice resolute. "The winter's end begins here." The cohort mounted, their banners raised, the pass's snow melting under a faint sun, the shard's destruction a spark of salvation. The dawn of thaw. Vernholt Keep stood scarred but unyielding, its granite walls blackened, its stag banners tattered but proud. The market square, once a battlefield of snow and fire, was quiet, the mob's torches extinguished, the air soft with the first hint of warmth in 3 years. King Alric rode through the gates, his wolf fur cloak drenched, his wounds bandaged, his gray eyes weary but resolute. His auburn beard gleamed with melting frost, his sword sheathed, the frost altar shard destroyed, the winter's grip loosening. Lady Gwyneth's rebellion was broken, her forces scattered, but High Priestess Meryn and her priests remained, their chance of Scover fading as the snow melted. Lord Baldric met Alric, his grizzled face lined with relief, his fur-lined cloak dusted with ash. "Sire, the Eastern Knights hold the keep. Gwyneth's in chains, her men fled. The people see the thaw, they call it your victory." Alric dismounted, his wounds throbbing, his voice steady. "Not mine, Baldric, ours." He turned to the square, where citizens gathered, their gaunt faces lit with hope, their ragged cloaks damp with melting snow. "Eldrenor rises," he shouted, his voice ringing, the crowd cheering, their voices a tide. Lady Alara, her silver-leaf cloak gleaming, her green eyes bright, stood beside him, her bow slung. "Alric, the priests are in the temple," she said, her voice soft. "Meryn claims the thaw proves Scover's power, not its end." Alric's jaw tightened, his sword heavy. "Then we end her lies." He strode to the temple of Orin, its basalt pillars dripping with meltwater, its sun statue glowing in the dawn's light. Meryn stood within, her white robes damp, her bone amulet dim, her blue eyes defiant. "Sire," she said, her voice trembling, "Scover spare us because you honor the altar. Worship him, or the winter returns." Alric's gray eyes burned, his voice resolute. "Your star was no god, just stone. The winter broke because we fought, not prayed." He seized her amulet, crushing it, its runes crumbling. Meryn fell silent, her priests kneeling, their faith broken. Alara's hand touched his, her warmth a lifeline. "The fields will grow again, Alric. You saved us." The temple's air warmed, the crowd outside chanting, "For the king." Alric's heart lifted, the winter's truth revealed, his reign a beacon of hope. The fields reborn. Vernholt, the heart of Eldrenor, stirred beneath a tentative spring sun, its cobbled streets glistening with meltwater, the air fragrant with damp earth and budding clover. The river Sylve, once a frozen ribbon, flowed freely, its waters catching the light like scattered silver. King Alric stood on the keep's battlements, his wolf fur cloak replaced by a green wool tunic, his auburn beard trimmed, his gray eyes tracing the fields beyond the city, where green shoots pierced the thawed soil. His shoulder and side wounds, now scarred, ached less, but the weight of 3 years of winter lingered in his heart. The star shard's destruction in the frost altar had broken the unnatural cold, revealing Scover's curse as a relic's anomaly, not a god's wrath, but Eldrenor's scars, starved villages, burned homes, and broken trust, demanded rebuilding. Lady Alara, her chestnut hair braided with spring flowers, her silver-leaf cloak traded for a linen gown, joined him, her green eyes bright with hope. "Alric, the eastern barons send grain," she said, her voice warm. "Harrowfen's fields are planted, and the Drenver trade furs for peace. The people call you the Thaw King." Alric's lips twitched, a rare smile breaking through. "A king's only as strong as his people," he said, his voice steady. "The granaries must fill before winter returns." His hand rested on his sword, its stag pommel polished, a reminder of battles won. Lord Baldric, his grizzled face softened by relief, approached, his fur-lined cloak now a simple vest. "Sire, the Baron's lands are yours, Gwyneth's in exile, her title stripped. The Senate meets to reform, including village elders. The priests are silent, Meryn's fled north." Alric's jaw tightened, Meryn's broken amulet vivid in his memory. "Let her flee," he said, his voice resolute. "Scover's myth dies with her." He turned to the market square, where merchants rebuilt stalls, their laughter mingling with the clink of hammers. "Alara, summon the Senate. We rebuild Eldrenor together, nobles, villagers, Drenver." Elera's hand brushed his, her warmth a lifeline. "You've saved us, Alric. The fields grow because of you." Her green eyes held his, a spark of something deeper. Alric nodded, his gray eyes on the horizon, where clouds parted to reveal a warming sun. "We saved each other," he said, his voice soft. He descended to the square, his green tunic a symbol of renewal, the crowd cheering for the Thaw King. The keep's walls gleamed, Eldranor's heart beating anew. The kingdom's oath. The great hall of Vernholt Keep was alive with light, its stone walls scrubbed of frost, its tapestries of summer hunts restored, their colors vibrant under new chandeliers of iron and glass. The oak-hewn throne, its sun runes polished, stood as a beacon of hope, no longer mocking the endless winter. King Alric sat upon it, his green tunic embroidered with stags, his auburn beard gleaming, his gray eyes calm but resolute. The Senate, nobles, village elders, and Drenver envoys, gathered, their robes and furs a tapestry of unity, the air warm with the scent of beeswax and fresh bread from the refilled granaries. Lord Baldric, his grizzled face lined with pride, presented a scroll of decrees, his voice steady. "Sire, the Senate pledges to you. We propose trade with the Drenver, land for the villages, and a council to share your rule, no more baron's greed, no more priest's lies." Alric rose, his sword sheathed, his voice ringing. "Eldranor is one kingdom," he said, his gray eyes scanning the hall. "No lord rules alone. Appoint the council, Elera, Baldric, and Varg of the Drenver. We govern together." The Senate cheered, their hands raised, their loyalty a fire rekindled. Lady Elera, her linen gown shimmering, her green eyes bright, stepped forward, her voice clear. "The fields yield, sire. The Drenver patrol the borders, and the people rebuild. Your sacrifice broke the winter." Her smile was a spark, her hand lingering near his. Varg, the Drenver leader, his wolfskin cape traded for a wool cloak, bowed, his braided hair gleaming. "King Alric, your steel earned our peace. The Drenver stand with Eldranor." His axe, now a symbol of alliance, rested at his side. Alric's heart lifted, the altar's shattered shard a distant memory. "Then let us swear an oath," he said, his voice resolute. "To rebuild, to unite, to never bow to fear." The Senate knelt, their voices a tide, for Eldranor. The hall's warmth was a promise, the winter's shadow banished. Outside, in the market square, the people gathered, their faces no longer gaunt, their candles glowing like stars. Alric raised his hand, his voice echoing. "Eldranor rises." The crowd roared, their hope a tide, the kingdom's oath binding them as one. The sun's return. 7 years later, Vernholt gleamed under a summer sun, its fields golden with wheat, its rivers silver sparkling, its markets bustling with merchants and Drenver traders. The keep stood renewed, its granite walls polished, its stag banners bright. King Alric, now 39, stood on the battlements, his green tunic simple, his auburn hair streaked with silver, his gray eyes calm. His scars, faded but present, were a testament to the winter that nearly broke Eldranor. The star shard, destroyed in the frost altar, was a legend, Scover's myth replaced by tales of the Thaw King. Lady Elera, now High Chancellor, stood beside him, her chestnut hair graying, her green eyes warm. Her linen gown bore the stag, her role as Alric's partner in rule, and heart, unspoken but known. "The council thrives, Alric," she said, her voice soft. "The Drenver trade, the villages prosper, the Senate listens. Your legacy endures." Alric smiled, his hand on hers, the warmth of her touch a constant. "Our legacy, Elera. You held me when I faltered." His eyes traced the fields, where children ran, their laughter a song. Lord Baldric, retired but proud, joined them, his face lined with age, his voice warm. "Sire, the people call the keep Alric's heart. The winter's a story now, a tale of courage." Alric's throat tightened, his gray eyes on the horizon, where the sun burned bright. "Then let it shine for them," he said, raising a sprig of clover, a gift from a farmer. "For Eldranor." The square below erupted, candles glowing, the kingdom's heart beating strong. The winter was gone, Alric's reign a light eternal.